U.S. Senator Marco Rubio is vowing to oppose the confirmation of a U.S. ambassador to Cuba until the country's human rights and political oppression issues are addressed. That statement comes on the heels of President Obama's announcement that embassies will reopen in both countries later this month. Tonight, my colleague Bret Baier talks with Rubio about Cuba, immigration, and a whole lot more.
There was no dream too big and no goal out of reach, even for the son of a bartender and a maid, because we were Americans.
Florida Senator and now presidential candidate Marco Rubio's unique family story helps him connect at a friendly stop in his hometown of Miami on what he hopes will be the road to his party's nomination. Why are you doing this?
I honestly believe the country is at a moment of extraordinary transition. And I honestly feel like I give our party the best chance, not just to win this election, but to lead this country in this new era.
You know the criticism that, does he have enough experience? Jeb Bush was just asked last week, are you the guy? He said, well, I'm far more qualified than Marco Rubio. He said, I don't mean it as a slight, but I'm far more qualified.
Well, candidates are going to say whatever they need to distinguish themselves or to win a campaign and get in a competitive advantage. Here's the truth, though. This election isn't going to be about the past. It's going to be about the future. I'll be more than happy to talk about my history as a city commissioner, as the Speaker of the Florida House, as a U.S. Senator, and what we've achieved. But truly, this election is not going to be about yesterday. It's going to be about tomorrow. And I don't think anyone running in the Republican field as of now has a better agenda for tomorrow than the one we're offering.
So when you hear Jeb Bush say that, or the Bush campaign kind of whisper that about experience, what do you think?
Campaigns are going to say whatever they need to get an advantage. I mean, it's just a part of the process. But this campaign isn't going to be about the past.
Do you think he's about the past?
No. Look, ultimately, it's your agenda and your ideas that will tell people whether or not you're focused on tomorrow or on yesterday. And our campaign is going to be focused on tomorrow.
It's a much different dynamic between the two Sunshine State leaders than when we sat down with then potential VP pick Rubio in 2012. You know, Jeb Bush thinks Mitt Romney should pick you.
Well, I'm not going to talk about the process anymore. I got to stay disciplined because the truth is all that's very flattering. I think Jeb is pretty special myself. So.
Before coming to Washington, Rubio was the youngest Speaker of the Florida House.
Washington is broken. Both parties are to blame.
In 2010, with Tea Party support, he claimed victory in a highly watched Senate race. Now, after 4 years in the U.S. Senate, seated on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and the Select Committee on Intelligence, most of his colleagues will tell you Rubio has an especially strong grasp of foreign policy issues.
Today, unlike 10 or 15 years ago, we face a world with multiple threats. You have three autocratic governments, Iran, China, and Russia, trying to dominate important regions of the world. Then you have the rise of radical jihad. Then you have a basically criminal enterprise with nuclear weapons in North Korea. And then an assortment of other challenges, for example, to democracy in Latin America. So it's complex. It's the most important thing the federal government does is keep us safe.
In Iraq, do you think we have a moral obligation to fix what we broke?
It's a geopolitical obligation because the safe haven that was created in Iraq after we exited and that government was not able to hold on is what has created or allowed ISIS to grow. It's the same issue in Syria and now happening in Libya, increasingly in Afghanistan. I most certainly think that this country should not have left early, and the president bragged about it, because it did. We didn't finish the job. Now, ultimately, the job belongs to the people of Iraq, but we were part of that process, an important part of that process. But the most important obligation we have in Iraq is to the national security of the United States.
You've called ISIS a grave threat
It is.
to the United States. So to that end, would you support a large contingent of U.S. ground troops in Iraq to eradicate ISIS?
Well, ultimately, I'm in favor of doing whatever it takes to defeat ISIS. Today, they are better armed, better equipped, and better funded than Al-Qaeda was on September 10th of 2001. I think the best way to defeat them at this point is in the early stages, now, immediately, more U.S. Special Operations Forces in conjunction with airstrikes to deal some humiliating, high-profile defeats to ISIS in the hopes of eroding some of their recruitment and their access to funds, because right now they've created this image of themselves as invincible. The second step needs to be the recruitment and establishment of a local force, primarily of Sunnis, to go in and defeat these Sunni radicals. In all this, there will still have to be a strong U.S. presence. Not a full-scale invasion, but significant number of special operators on the ground that will allow us to improve our targeting, our training, and ultimately some targeted operations.
Political analysts are divided on the Rubio candidacy.
So Marco Rubio is a great profile for Republicans. He's young, he's Hispanic, he comes from Florida, a swing state. He gives a terrific speech, uplifting. The question is how badly he hurt himself when he attempted to broker a deal and appeared to be a pragmatist on immigration.
As a Cuban American, he would bring diversity to the ticket. I think he would give the Republicans an excellent chance to carry Florida and also to attract an additional segment of the Hispanic vote, the critical Hispanic vote, in a general election.
For years, Republicans have debated the best way to win support of Hispanic voters. If you were advising the party, what 2 or 3 things would you tell them to do heading into 2016?
We need to be seen as the people fighting for them. And my agenda, the one I'm campaigning on, the one I've governed on for years, is strongly built on that because that's where I come from. We do need to address immigration. It is a legitimate issue that this country needs to confront. We have a very serious illegal immigration problem that needs to be brought under control. We have a legal immigration system that doesn't work well. It needs to be modernized and made more of a merit-based system. And after we've done those 2 things, we will have to deal with reality. We have millions of people in this country that have been here for longer than a decade, who have not otherwise violated the law, and will be here for the rest of their lives. And we're going to have to deal with them in a way that's reasonable but responsible. And I've outlined that way. And that is having them come forward, pass a background check, learn English, pay a fine, start paying taxes, and you get a work permit. And that's all you'll have for 10 years or maybe longer. Nothing will happen on immigration in America until illegal immigration is under control. That's a lesson we learned in 2013. It's only gotten harder since.
Do you feel that backlash that happened back then, that it affects you to this day, the issue of immigration?
Perhaps in the minds of some, but it was still, at that moment in time especially, an issue that had to be addressed, and still now. Things have happened since then. We've had a migratory crisis on the border. We've had a second executive order. We've had all sorts of revelations about dangerous felons being released from immigration detention. The confidence of the American people in 2013 that we would enforce the law no matter what the law said. People told us it doesn't matter what you write in the law, they won't enforce it. That's what people believed in 2013. That's what they now have seen happen over the last 2 years. And that's why I tell anyone, if you are serious about immigration reform, you must first be for enforcement. You must first be for bringing illegal immigration under control. If we don't do that, we can't do anything else. Politically, just don't have the votes to do it.
A recent challenge? 2 New York Times pieces targeting Rubio, first on unpaid traffic tickets, but then a bigger spread on his personal budget. What about the basis of that second story about your finances? If somebody says, you know, if he's president, he's going to be in charge of keeping our country's books straight.
Well, a couple points. Number one, my finances are simple. I have one debt in the whole world, and that's my mortgage. That's it. I've paid off a student loan. I've sold homes that I bought, unfortunately, right before the real estate downturn, which nobody saw coming. I had to borrow money to go to school, and that was 10 years ago, and that's what the New York Times liked to write about. But I'm proud of the decisions we've made. You know, I'm raising 4 kids in a time where it's more expensive than ever, in a pretty expensive city. All 4 of my kids have been able to receive a quality faith-based education. All 4 of them have their first 4 years of college paid off. We save for retirement. I even own my car, a Ford F-150, free and clear. But I have a record when it comes to the United States and how we should be spending money. I have a record in the state legislature where, as Speaker, we twice balanced our budget in the middle of a downturn without raising taxes. And that's what people should be focused on.
His longtime friendship with former Florida Congressman David Rivera has also been brought up. Rivera left politics under an ethics cloud for questionable campaign spending practices. But Rubio's never walked away from Rivera.
He's a friend, and I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't feel like you should turn your back on friends because they're going through a difficult time.
After the recent New York Times stories, Mitt Romney's campaign manager, Matt Rhodes, released a statement saying that Rubio was, quote, thoroughly vetted for vice president, and that the campaign was, quote, confident that if chosen, his legislative record and high personal character would have been a great asset to Mitt on the campaign trail and in office. Romney, of course, ended up choosing Congressman Paul Ryan instead. After the U.S. Supreme Court ruling on gay marriage, Rubio, a Catholic, released a statement reaffirming his support of marriage between a man and a woman, but added, quote, "We live in a republic and must abide by the law. A large number of Americans will continue to believe in traditional marriage, and a large number of Americans will be pleased with the court's ruling today. In the years ahead, it is my hope that each side will respect the dignity of the other." Well before the ruling, Rubio expressed his concerns about protecting religious freedom.
We are at the water's edge of the argument that mainstream Christian teaching is hate speech. Because today we've reached the point in our society where if you do not support same-sex marriage, you are labeled a homophobe and a hater. So what's the next step after that? After they've done going after individuals, the next step is to argue that the teachings of mainstream Christianity, the Catechism of the Catholic Church, is hate speech. And that's a real and present danger.
When it comes to campaigning, Rubio says his wife, Jeanette, and 4 children will be part of the process.
Your family into this?
They are. I mean, now that we're into the summer, my kids are not in school for the next couple months, so I hope to be able to take them out on the road a little bit and they can enjoy some of the fun parts. Fundraisers are not a lot of fun for them, but I think they're looking forward to going to the Iowa State Fair, so it's an exciting time for them.
You have candidates saying all kinds of things. Scott Walker said he's ready for you to be his VP.
Well, I have no problem with that, except it has to be in alphabetical order.
Like others, Rubio saw a bump in the polls after his announcement, but he's leveled off in some recent surveys. He says he doesn't pay much attention, though he concedes occasionally watching Candidate Casino and Charles Krauthammer's bets.
You know, Krauthammer's a very smart man, and I'm glad he's picking me. I'd rather have him picking me than not. But this is a long process. We got to earn this, and we've got to prove to people that we're up to the task. This is the most important job in the world. It's important that we work hard and show our stripes along the way, and I'm looking forward to this. This is a unique opportunity, and I'm blessed to have a chance to do it.
Little shout out for Dr. Krauthammer. Well, our series